Welcome to It's No Accident, a podcast about the challenges of personal injury and wrongful death law in Florida, one of the nation's most complex legal environments.
You'll hear compelling stories about real cases from our law firm in Tallahassee that will help you better understand your rights and protect yourself from the negligence of others.
I'm Mark Nonni.
And I'm Jaeson Homola.
And this is
It's No Accident.
So, like you said, we have, predicted to be a pretty bad storm season coming up. It's pretty good odds that there might be a bad storm coming through. And so if a bad storm does come through and really messes up someone's house and the homeowners, contacted their insurance company, trying to work with their insurance company to find out, how much the insurance company is going to cover, when does that person know? How do you know when you should contact an attorney? At what point, do you realize, or what needs to happen to make you realize that, all right, now I need to call an attorney and get an attorney involved?
So generally the first thing, the most important thing, obviously, is to get the claim, make the claim, right? And then most of the time when you make a claim, they will get an adjuster out within 2 weeks, right? And there's statutory obligations for them to, document the fact that you've made a claim and send you notification, let you know when an adjuster is going to come out. Generally, the process is you make the claim, right? They get an adjuster out. That an adjuster will go through your house and do a report. And so what I would say when that adjuster's there is the things that you are obviously know are damaged, I would make sure he documents that, all right? And a lot of times, if you don't tell them anything, they look for a few bad spots. They got to go to 10 other houses that week, and they're just trying to get out of there.
So you're saying you should walk around with the adjuster and point stuff out to him?
Yeah, you want him to you want him to at least focus on areas that you know are damaged aren't the same, right? And however that doesn't mean he's gonna, a lot of times they'll say, oh, that looks bad or this looks bad, but when it comes back with the actual estimate of what they're gonna pay you, it may or may not be included, but at least you're giving them a chance. And the other thing is most people don't understand. They're not in construction. They don't do, adjusting, but the adjuster for the insurance company does. He should recognize how all this works. He should recognize where traditionally damage happens and occurs. Then the next step, what happens is they'll evaluate. He'll do an evaluation. He'll say they use a program called Xactimate, which is a construction estimating program. And then he'll send you back at some point they'll send you his evaluation, and they'll make a claims determination as far as areas that are coverage and what's paid. And 95% of the time, people are not happy with that number. Unfortunately, what most people don't realize is that does not end the insurance company's obligation, right? They have an obligation to pay for all damage covered by the claim. And if he comes out and gives you an estimate for 10 grand to repair your house, I would have preferably a local trusted contractor come out and give you an estimate to repair your home, right? Generally, that estimate should be provided to the insurance company, right? And you should say your claim is off by X amount of dollars, right? And then it gives them the opportunity to do the right thing and pay what they're supposed to pay. And sometimes they'll look at it and say, well, this is covered, that's covered, this isn't covered, and we'll increase what we're willing to pay you by X dollars, right?
It at least kicks off like a negotiation.
Yeah, and it shouldn't, honestly, it shouldn't be a negotiation. It should simply be, this is what it's going to cost to get my damage repaired. Right. But, they'll say things like, well, you had laminate, and this guy's bid is for, a higher end of laminate, so it's 38 cents more per square foot than it should be, so we're not paying that. There's things like that'll happen, right? And those generally aren't the problem, right? As long as it's recognized and in the bid, and then at least you get to a point where hopefully you don't need us and you don't need a lawyer, right? And you get close enough to where you can actually do the repairs and everybody can move on with their life.
Right.
But oftentimes, you'll know you need a lawyer when they stop, when they won't work with you, when they won't take into consideration the actual bids from people who are going to do the actual work, when they won't look at any of that stuff and are stuck at a number and saying, this is all we're going to pay you. That's when you should probably find a lawyer if that number is significant enough.
Right.
What about public adjusters? What are public adjusters? I think after storms, I feel like everybody always hears people talking about public adjusters. Like, what are they, and are they helpful? Should people hire them, or what?
So public adjusters generally come out and they do something very similar to what the insurance company's adjusters do. They come out and they use that same similar Xactimate program, and they go through your house and they get an estimate of damages, and then there's a fight they fight with the adjuster to try to get them to pay whatever their estimated damage is versus what the insurance company's estimated damages is. And sometimes they're helpful and they can increase the value of your claim, but very rarely do they don't have the ability to put any real pressure on an insurance company because they're not going to be filing suit. They can't do anything to force the insurance company's hand. And that doesn't mean that they aren't helpful, but generally speaking, you're better off going to an attorney if you reach that point, so that you have somebody who can force their hand, as opposed to, it's like, going to a store and your kid's whining for candy, right? It's easy for you to say no because you can, right? And there's nothing that kid can do to make you get him the candy. Right. So most of it is whether you want. To me, the easiest thing to do is to get a local contractor out there and to put together a bid. And 99% of the time, you send them that bid and they say, well, it's not done in Xactimate, so we can't consider this.
Or all local contractors are not created equal. So everybody wants the best of the best. You want somebody that's credentialed, that has a great reputation to come out and fix your house. Yeah. Well, that person is going to come at a cost, and that cost might be a lot more than what Joe Blow down the street, who's not insured and doesn't have the greatest reputation. He might do it for half the cost. Yeah, and the insurance company will say, well, we know this guy that'll do it for half the cost. So, we understand that he sent you this estimate, but this guy will do it for this amount. So is there a way to deal with that? Do you have to use the lowest common denominator?
Well, it's you get the choice to do what you want, right? Couple of things I want to cover though that are important are, it's what you're contracting for is to get the reason you have an insurance contract is so if there's damage, there's coverage and your house gets fixed. Mm-hmm. Your 99% of Americans' largest investment, it's to protect that investment, right? And so oftentimes after a storm or a bad hurricane, there's damage to your home, and you have to fight to protect that investment. And you can't be afraid to fight with them because they, it's their business model, right? And there are great insurance companies and there are bad insurance companies. And some of them are very reasonable and work with you. And, if you give them, what they need and the evidence they need, they'll pay the claim. And others, no matter what you do, it's never enough, right? But I think it's really important to understand how you get paid from an insurance policy. And we should have covered this before, but a lot of times people don't understand that they're paid not on replacement cost, but on what they call an actual cash value. So it's what it would cost to replace less depreciation. And so, for instance, if you had a 30-year roof and it got damaged by a storm, and we're just going to use a ballpark number, and it had been 15 years and the roof was $10,000, well, they might come out and say, well, we're agreeing to pay for your roof. Here's $10,000, less your deductible of $1,000, less depreciation of $5,000. So you get a check for $4,000 and say, well, how am I going to do anything with this, right? But if you do the repairs within the time period provided under the contract, which is, generally within a year, then they owe you the recoverable depreciation, right? So a lot of times, for instance, if they pay you, if they say they're going to pay you $9,000 for your roof, but then they depreciate it $4,000, you can go to a roofer and say there's $9,000 available here, right? As soon as the roof's repaired, I'll send them photos. They'll send you the check for the remainder, right? And so you can get those repairs done. The hardest part for a lot of people is, they'll make a claim and they'll get paid an ACV amount and don't understand that they're entitled to the depreciation, right? And that depreciation often cuts in 20, 30, 40% of your claim. Mm-hmm. And so most people say, well, I can never fix anything with the 5 or 10 or 12 grand I got. It's just not enough. And they don't realize that they're entitled to that other portion of the claim. So
one other thing I wanted to touch on too is you talked about the claims process, and right after you see that you have these damages to file the claim, but it might be 2 weeks before the adjuster comes out to your place. Mm-hmm. What do you do during that 2 weeks? And one of the things that I know you've talked about in the past is this clause in pretty much every insurance contract that you have a duty to mitigate your damages. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, generally there's actually some additional coverage that you can get money quicker too. It's things, unfortunately, you still see them hanging around, but it's tarping roofs. It's you have a duty to protect your property from further damage if you can. And some of that is sealing up openings that occur. It's tarping roofs that are leaking, covering up broken windows. But the first thing you need to do is make sure wherever you are, it's safe. Oftentimes there's down power lines, there's gas issues, water issues. The first thing you need to do is make sure you and your family are safe. And then, if you can access your house or get into your home and see it, then what you want to do is try to prevent any area where water can get into your home, right? And if there's a pipe that's broken and leaking, get the water off to that pipe, wherever that leak is, things like that. And your duty to mitigate is really just to prevent further damage. Okay. And if for instance, if you have a tree in your house and you pay somebody to cut it out, but leave the hole in the roof for 6 months while you're waiting for your claim to get paid or roofers to be available. And that's the other thing is a lot of times there's not supplies. There's not enough construction workers. There's not enough roofers around. And so some of these take times. And during that period, you have got to do your best to mitigate any damage. And mitigate just means try to prevent damage that's reasonable. So the only other thing I would say is oftentimes after these storms, roofers from all over the country swarm in. And sometimes that's all there is. But do your best to try and find somebody that's local or, at least from the right state or from the right area, that's been around. Because they're generally going to do better work. And they're more trustworthy and they're generally insured and, all the things that matter in case something happens. There's a lot of times the homeowners get caught between a rock and multiple hard places. They end up fighting their insurance company, end up fighting contractors, end up fighting roofers. They end up, having a lot of battles when all they want is their home fixed and to get what they paid for when they purchased an insurance policy.
Contractors don't really care about their reputation in the community if they're not from that community.
Correct.
Yeah, so,
Correct.
well, I'm going back to Indiana, so I don't really care if everybody in this area doesn't like the work that I did or the fact that I didn't call them back, things
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. So, I mean, I could talk about this subject for way
Sure.
too long, unfortunately. But, I think if I was going to summarize, I would say the most important part is to take photos of your home, your property, its condition, and then if you do suffer damage, make a claim, and then do your best to provide the information that is requested. They're your insurance company. You have a duty to provide information. You can't just say, this is broken, fix it. Right? And if it's not included in their scope of work, get a contractor out there or somebody out there to give you a bid to document the damage and get that to your insurance company and request payment. And then, all you can do from there is work with them. And if they stop working with you, contact us.
This conversation continues and much more on the next episode of It's No Accident. No matter your injury, Nonni Homola is here to help you recover. Visit noho.law today.